Welcome back. South Dakota Republican Governor Kristi Noem joins me. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too.
Okay, let's start with some bookkeeping work. Are you running for president?
Oh, you are. I'm not announcing today, Greta.
Okay. And what did you say to me before we sat down?
I said wrong question.
Right. Okay.
Ask a different question.
I know. I told before we even started. I said that I was going to ask you. You said wrong answer. Okay. All right. Let's get down to business now. First, welcome to Washington D.C.
Thank you.
I want to start first at the border. You were one of the first governors to agree to send troops to the border. When are you doing this?
Well, the first time we did was 2 years ago. I had a lot of troops volunteer to go, actually. And we've had our helicopters down there conducting surveillance. And again, in August, in response to Governor Greg Abbott's request, we're sending more National Guard troops down there. I'm thankful other governors are doing this, too. And we're specifically sending Guard troops because they're trained and prepared for this kind of combat, this kind of war zone that's going on down there. So I know the request came in for law enforcement officers, but our law enforcement officers are needed in our communities. It's really our National Guard that's trained for the kind of situation that they'll be in, falling in with other agencies.
What do you hear from the governor, from Governor Abbott?
Well, you know, he's grateful. My ask to him, I put a lot of parameters around deploying my troops, though. I want to know how they're going to be taken care of, how they'll be fed, what command they'll be under. I want them to remain under my command. They can work in cooperation. I want them to be armed and have ammunition. I want them to be able to take certain actions. So we're checking through all those protocols to make sure that those will be honored. And then about the August-September timeframe is when they'll deploy. All
right. Another one of your first is TikTok. You're the first governor to ban TikTok.
I was. You know, it was interesting when we did that. You know, it was a few weeks, and all of a sudden we started to see other states do now. That vast majority, Republicans and Democrat governors now have taken the same action, and Congress took action as well. So sometimes people, look at you and say, why is she doing this? And then they start to learn and follow suit. So,
well, okay, I confess to you as well. I mean, I had TikTok and all this, the horror of TikTok. I took TikTok off. Well, I put it back on. You sat down, and so I took TikTok back off. I mean, it's hard not to keep TikTok on.
It is. Yeah, I sat down. It was like a confessional. It was like amazing. Greta's like, I downloaded TikTok. I'm like,
I took it off in front of you. I took it off. I deleted it in front of you.
You did.
But so isn't it too late? I mean, for TikTok or not? I mean.
Well, it is for me because the January 6th committee, the bunch of Democrats released all my personal information. My phone's been hacked into so many times because of what the Democrats have done to me. But for all other Americans, no, it's not too late. Listen, these guys are communists that want to take over our country and take away our freedom. So anything you can do to get that kind of software, that kind of app off of your phone and off of your personal information is incredibly important. They are going to use what they learn about you, Greta, to change the way you think. To change the way that you think about what America is, how your kids will be educated, and in a way to groom you to be more controlled in the future and to be more accepting of what the Communist Party believes is the right path for them, which is not for us and which is not freedom. So that's what they're doing. They've got a long game here, and we have to be smart enough, to be disciplined enough just to not do it.
Well, speaking of the way you think, you and I have talked before about this, is that I was the last year without Title IX. And Title IX that came in that gave girls and young women sports opportunities was one of the biggest liberating thing for young girls and women. I remember when I was in high school, we had nothing to do, absolutely nothing. After school, we'd all pile in the car, and the boys would go off and have sports, which had leadership, and then over the years, I've seen people, young girls, women get scholarships, have health. We never got exercise. I mean, we never ran. We didn't do any of that stuff. And Title IX was such a liberating moment for girls and young women. And now, at least women my age, I mean, many of them were shocked that this is being chipped away with having men compete.
I've got to think that you feel like you're in bizarro world because it's the same people, feminists, and people that would declare themselves working and hard for women to have opportunity are the same ones destroying it today. That's what I think is so strange. Is back then, so many people fought for women to just have equal opportunity.
Yeah, we weren't asking for a lot more. Nothing more.
Just equal opportunity. And we got it. And then now we're losing it because other people recognize that what a powerful tool that was. What a powerful tool that was to help young women succeed.
But what a huge difference on so many levels, whether it was health for exercise, leadership, scholarship opportunities, everything. It was such a liberating force for women.
I can't imagine what would have happened if Title IX hadn't been there. I mean, what my life would have been like. I competed in every sport in high school, and some
What
of
was
them
your
I wasn't
sport?
I played basketball. I ran track
Any
for a
good?
while. I was a shot put thrower, discus thrower. Yes, I was. I was.
How far?
Not that great.
Well,
but
you must remember.
I did.
What was it?
I remember. I honestly don't remember. I never made it to the state level or anything.
And basketball, you ain't good
listen,
at that?
when you run shot or when you throw shot, they also make you run a few races too, and that was by far the worst. I used to make a deal with one of my friends that we would not beat each other. At least we weren't the last ones coming in last. So my best sport was probably basketball, and I loved playing volleyball too.
In your state, generally, what do the women in the house sort of, if there's a way to poll or take the pulse, what do women think about Title IX and what's happening in this country about it?
Oh, I think overwhelmingly in South Dakota, because we've done so much work really educating people on why Title IX needs to be protected, they're all in. They're all in on, they don't understand. We have, our state is very populist, operates a lot on common sense, and because we communicate and talk about the why behind a policy, they all want their girls' sports to be protected.
Are you finding any resistance in the state?
You do, absolutely. Yes, you find resistance, and people try to turn it into something that's about hate or division, and it's not that at all. So that's why we have to work harder to make sure that they don't twist it into something ugly.
Okay, why are you in Washington, by the way? I love having you on the set, but what brings you to town?
Well, I testified at a Natural Resources Committee hearing in the House, and it was the Bureau of Land Management. It's a government agency that manages federal land, is changing how they're going to handle that land. So there's many Western states that have probably 40, 50, 60% of their land mass is owned by the federal government. This agency, at Joe Biden's direction, is changing how that land can be used. In many instances, they're setting up a mechanism to where conservation will be prioritized over any other purpose, which means they can shut down all this federal land and stop all grazing by farmers and ranchers who've been out there for generations, all drilling for oil, looking for minerals, even recreation. People won't be able to go hiking on this land anymore or ride bikes or explore because conservation and climate change will be prioritized above everything else. So it is a takeover of the land by a powerful federal government.
They currently make the decision on it, right? It's just a question of how they prioritize what they're going to do with it. But you're still bound by that now. It's just they get to decide what to do with it. They're prioritized.
Yeah, they're not supposed to change the priorities without going through Congress. And instead, this agency has bypassed Congress. So they're, in this rule, breaking federal law. They're trampling on states' rights. They're taking away all transparency by creating a mechanism to where they don't have to have public comment periods or put it in the Federal Register. There's so much precedent in this rule, and that was really my argument at the hearing, that they set that can be used to destroy this country, that's why Congress needs to push back and stop them, is because if you allow the federal government to grab power, and Joe Biden's been clear, he wants 30% of the land in this country to be under the control of the federal government by 2030.
Well, how much in your state right now is federal land?
Oh, I'd say it's less than 20% in South Dakota.
And what is being done?
I'm just pretty outspoken and opinionated about it.
Yeah, but of the 20%, what's being done with that federal land generally?
A lot of it is grazed by cattle ranchers.
But
a lot
so
of it's
they
West
rent,
River.
they lease it?
They get a permit from the federal government. They pay to utilize it, and they control how it's rented because conservation is equal priority with that grazing, so they can do both. But what they're trying to do now is put conservation the #1 purpose.
So would that mean that in your state of that 20%, I mean, it's not all.
It means those ranchers go bankrupt.
They no longer. They can't be grandfathered in. There's no way they lose that.
The government has the power to decide nobody can graze anymore, and they go out of business. They quit raising beef in this country, and that's the one thing that I talked about at the hearing is there's no definition in this rule that China can't come in and buy up all those conservation leases, and that we have a government like China or Iran or North Korea now having influence over our federal land and pushing out Americans and pushing them out of business. Listen, this could be a way to control our food supply. That's energy independence. When we shut down our own natural resources on our land and allow the federal government to do that, it's a way for another country to overtake us.
I was in North Dakota covering the story about when the Chinese wanted to buy that, or they did buy the land.
You went there.
Yeah, I went there.
Oh.
Do you have any Chinese-owned businesses in your state?
Well, I was also the first governor to propose banning China from buying land in South Dakota, and we're still working on it. So my legislators We're not thrilled with doing it, but we're figuring out how to keep them out of the state because it's a huge national security threat. We are getting the next generation bombers at Ellsworth Air Force Base, so they specifically will be targeting that base, and we need to protect it.
South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you.
Welcome to Washington.